Hello, everyone. So I want to tell you about why your next CEO is going to be a technologist. But let's do a history lesson first. Right now, you've got about 1,800 CEOs here in the United States. Between 40 and 50% of them have MBAs. Very, very few of them have a computer science degree or really any kind of technical degree whatsoever. And there's actually a good reason for that. If you think about how organizations have worked for quite some time, IT was the back office. When I started, IT handled things like accounting and payroll and all of that. It was not considered a revenue-generating part of the business. It was considered a cost center. And what do we do with cost centers? We push down costs as much as possible because they're overhead. We're not getting anything useful out of them. Okay. Slide. Okay, we'll stick it, there we go. Okay, so, and this is what life looked like as a computer scientist. And I actually have enough gray hair that I was working in an environment like this. And we were supporting, as I said, the back end. And we didn't have to understand the business. We were the geeks. And the CEOs, and actually much of the C-suite, they didn't have to understand technology because that wasn't their frontline business. But the world has changed. And one of the poster children from this actually is Bill Gates. He was one of the first really high-profile CEOs that came from a technology background. We were just having a conversation, though, backstage. It wasn't just Bill Gates, because Bill Gates, after a time, also had Steve Ballmer. And so you had someone who wasn't really a technologist, but knew business, and you had someone who was very clearly a technologist and maybe didn't quite understand the business at that time at the same level. But we've got other examples as well. But you'll notice all of these are technology companies. And that shouldn't be such a surprise that the CEO of a technology company would in fact be a technologist. And very often, even when you think about startups, unless the startup's prime purpose is technology, the CEO is not likely to be a technologist. But that is changing. Of course, we have our tech-native companies. All of these CEOs do have a technology background. They came into a business role from a technology background, but again, that's not surprising because these are actually technology companies. They understand they are technology companies. What's happening, though, is more and more industries are becoming technology industries, where it's harder and harder to be in a situation where you are not a technology company, where technology doesn't have a significant influence on your top line. And so we have car companies and pizza companies and insurance companies. All of these companies have significant C-level executives that have a technology background. So what do? If you were a technologist 20 years ago aspiring to be a CEO in a traditional company would have been a fantasy unless you abandoned your technology roots, went back and got an MBA, and turned yourself into a business person. And there are actually quite a few people out in the world like that, who did start programming, but decided that they wanted to get into the business. The good news is you don't have to give up your passion of technology anymore just to become one of the big boys. But what about if you're a CEO and your world is changing around you? You have all of these silly people talking about this technology stuff that you don't completely understand, but you know how important it is. So I want to spend the next few minutes talking through both of these personas. If you are a technology person and you really want to be a CEO, you don't have to go back for an MBA. But you do have to be able to understand how your organization makes money. What is it that drives the top line? What is it that drives revenue? Because more and more, with the pace of change in technology, it's not our ability to monetize something over the long term, but our ability to actually react quickly to take advantage of opportunities. Because what's happening is the technology landscape is altering the strategy canvas that business executives are looking at for how they can get a leg up on their competition. So you have to learn how it is your organization makes money, and then start to use your passion for technology to say, this is how I'm going to exploit technology to be one up on my competition. Or this is how I'm going to counter a threat that my competition has just thrown at me. Your passion of technology married with your understanding of how it is the business makes money will allow you as a technologist to advance the business strategy of your organization. Unfortunately, you have to learn to speak a little less than a geek, a little less like a geek. Eventually, when everybody is a geek, which will happen at some point, you won't have to worry about that. But we're still in a situation where technologists do have to learn the language of the business. Don't explain how wonderful your idea is in the context of technology. Explain how wonderful that idea is in the context of the value that it's going to deliver to your end customer. Okay, what if you're one of these dinosaurs? What if you're one of these CEOs that still isn't completely clear how to get your phone to work, and you're not really quite sure what all of this Instagram stuff is all about? What do? If you don't do anything, your company is going to be like that barge. But you don't actually have to learn how to code. It's not so much your ability to be a computer technologist as it is your passion for and appreciation of technology. Think about the potentials. Think about the consequences. Learn how to speak the language. What are some things you can do? Go to a conference like this. As a CEO, if you're in an organization, your CEO doesn't get it, try to find opportunities for them to see the intersection of business and technology. There are lots of pure business conferences out there. There are lots of pure technology conferences out there, but more and more they're intersecting because the language of business is changing and the nature of business is changing to become more technological. So talk to those people that you used to have down in that other room that you didn't really quite know what they did. Engage with them. Try to help them understand how the business makes money. Help them understand what keeps you up at night. What worries you? What do you know about your business and your industry and your customers that they might be able to help you with? Because for a time, we are probably going to have more of these Gates-Ballmer relationships where you've got someone who knows the business, someone who knows the tech, and if you've got the right kind of relationship and the right level of trust, that will allow you both to advance. Learn their language. This is true for both technologists needing to know the language of the business, as well as the business people needing to start to understand the language of technology. Let's face it, I'm a geek. I can say this. Geeks really love our geek speak. We really love to get into those details and all those edge cases. And isn't this really cool stuff? But if you want a seat at that table, if you want to actually be influencing the business direction that your company is taking and how it is using technology, you have to learn to speak the language of the business. CEOs have to learn a bit more to speak the language of technology, to understand the different ways that technology is going to influence their organization and their industry. Because unlike before, you can have this wonderful strategy, and tomorrow, Twitter is going to come out with something new, and now all of a sudden, you, Mr. Banking CEO, your customers are going to expect you to interact with them in a completely different way. So you have to learn how to follow what is happening, not just in your industry, but in all of the consumer-facing industries. Because technology is now, in ways that it never was before, a contributor to top line, not just bottom line. Yes, we still have lots of opportunities for optimization of the back end, But CEOs aren't in that job to worry about efficiencies. CEOs are in that job to worry about strategy, to worry about vision. And more companies, the CEO of that organization is going to have to be able to speak to the role technology is going to play in laying out and executing against the business strategy to drive top line. There is no one path to leadership anymore. You don't need an MBA. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an MBA. You do need to understand businesses. We also need to understand technology. If you don't understand balance sheets and income statements and business covenants and all of those kinds of things, you won't become a CEO. But if you don't understand how devices and mobility and AR, VR are going to change the expectations your customers have of you and the way you interact, then you shouldn't be a CEO either. Our leaders are going to be hybrids. They may not all know how to code, but they'll be passionate. You'll watch their eyes light up when they talk about some new technology and how it's going to allow them to provide better value to their customers. And let's face it, we can't be complacent. No one in business can be complacent because the landscape is just changing too rapidly. Business models, technologies, ways of engaging, ways of interaction. The scope of what is possible is expanding so rapidly. And finally, more so than ever before, your end customers are far more empowered than they've ever been before. Your route to the top table is to be an advocate for your customer. Be the people who understand what it is those customers want so that you can deliver the value that they want, so you can anticipate their needs, so that you can exploit technology to provide more value to them, which drives your top line revenue now. Thank you very much.